Hello and welcome to Freedom from Trauma, an online education series where we're interviewing experts, teachers, and authors to bring you powerful and profound conversations and practices that help heal trauma and consciously create the body, mind, and spirit that you truly desire. Today, it's my absolute honor to introduce to you our special guest, Precious Wayne Peaks. Welcome, Precious.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and being here with us today. And your journey and your life story has been riddled with different experiences of trauma. So you're not only a trauma survivor, but you are someone who can be called a thriver and someone that has taken those experiences and turned it into service for others. You've done that through your books and your work with in the spiritual field and with sharing the message of our divine knowing of who we are, and your work and your writing represents that. So I want to thank you for your demonstration and for the work that you've done and for the fires you've walked through to be here today. Your journey has been, with the risk of sounding, stating the obvious, it is, we're all precious, but you have the name Precious, and you've really had a life that has helped you turn that into gold for others. So, I do want to ask you as we start to share this journey with the audience that's here watching, here with the theme to really talk about getting into the idea of freedom from trauma. Take us into your journey, Precious, and how did you, what did you have to go through to get here?
Well, to get to the point of being free from trauma, it really wasn't easy. So I want to start out by saying it's not easy. It takes time, and the healing process always has some pain involved.
Yeah.
But you first have to face the things that you've gone through and find a place where you can identify that it wasn't your fault. So in life, we go through things. And as children, we even go through things that some kind of way we feel like we did something to cause this to happen. It was something we did. We weren't good enough. We weren't pretty enough. We weren't smart enough. Something that drew whatever happened to us. And we go through situations where we deal with people that may be toxic, and we allow the toxic nature of the people that we're dealing with to become embedded in us, and we become slightly toxic ourselves. Maybe not where we harm other people, but we carry so much inside from what has happened, till we become standoffish to other people, mean to other people, dark to other people. And so the first thing I had to do was face me.
Mm.
And in the process of facing me and accepting what happened to me in each situation, and understanding that there may have been things I could have done different, there may have not. And just accepting the things that I could have done different, but then being able to accept the things that I couldn't control, to be able to just accept that I don't control everything, was the very first part that I had to go through. Then
Yeah.
okay, so I encourage people that have been through anything. With my situation, for those who don't know it, I was molested. My mother was a heroin addict. I went through different things and lived with different people throughout the family members. I was kidnapped and raped at 15. And it just seemed like everything just kept coming, kept coming, kept coming. When you deal with parents with addictions, it comes with different things. You learn to be an adult really, really young, because you have to take care of yourself. And so you be, you begin to take on different traits as a defense mechanism. So where other children may be friendly and happy and loving and kind, you're not,
Yeah.
because you don't know who's going to touch you next, or who's going to hit you next, or do anything damaging to you next. So you're working to draw yourself away from being damaged again.
Right.
As you get older, you hear things people say. People know your situation, and they speak when they think they're out of your earshot, and have the things that they say and how they think you're going to turn out because of the things that you've been through. And you begin to take on the feeling of being a damaged good.
Mm.
And so, like you see in the store, damaged goods go on clearance. You know, they they don't get the better thing. They don't get have the better price. And some end up given away or thrown away because no one buys them at all. And you have to come to grips with the fact that you're not damaged and you're not defined by what you went through. One of the biggest things I had to identify with was forgiveness. Because until you forgive whoever it was for whatever it was, even yourself, for situations that you find that you put yourself in, maybe you married the wrong person and it ended up in a domestic violence situation. Now you feel like you were in this situation because of something wrong you did. You have to forgive you, and you have to forgive your perpetrator in order to overcome it. Because as long as you hold the anger and the pain on the surface, you really can't move forward. You're kind of trapped. They still have the power over the situation. They still control and trigger you, because now if someone speaks loud, you respond fearfully because of the situation. You haven't let go of the situation you've been through. They may not mean to, they might not be aggressive at all, but your mind is triggered by what you've been through. So now you respond. So it's just a lot, but trauma is something that you can overcome. You can find your way through. You can feel your way through.
So you found yourself at 15, you said kidnapped. And between that assault that you said you were raped at 15, kidnapped and raped, between that and you finding your way back now where you are, there was a journey to be had. And you know, the forgiveness process, it's blood, sweat and tears, and it's not a straight line. It's up and down, in and out, and jagged and edges that
Mm-hmm.
it has. How did you come to realize that you finally had to forgive in order to heal?
I bottomed out. What happened, like I said, I had an addicted mother. And so she introduced me into a kind of arranged relationship. In the relationship, the guy lived a lifestyle that brought negative attention, which is how I, in turn, on my way to school, ended up getting kidnapped and raped. At that point, I wasn't only angry at the attacker, I was angry at my mother. I was angry at my boyfriend at the time. I was angry that no one was there. My anger and pain was so much bigger than just, I'm mad at the person who did this to me. I was mad at everything that I felt caused it. So immediately in my mind, I began to feel like even when I'm trying to do the right thing, the wrong just always happens. So I might as well just do the wrong thing, because the outcome is going to be the same. And so I ran away from home at 15. And at that point, there was no other choice but pretty much a street based life. and all that comes with it. I made it through high school and I made it into college. The educational part was there, but the mental part was just gone. So at 17, I tried to commit suicide.
Well, what do you mean by a street-based life? Can you say more about that?
Yeah. I ran away from home. So I didn't go to a family member. I kind of stayed from pillar to post with different friends. With that being the case, I ended up in wrong crowds, hanging out in gang affiliate situations, in drug selling situations. I was very now I look back and realize I was very blessed. I never got into the stripping or the prostitution or anything, but the drug lifestyle is just as bad. So where people sit back and point fingers about people who are into prostitution and stripping and all of that, drug dealing is just as bad. You're corrupting someone's family. You're destroying someone's family. And at about 16 and a half, I met a guy whose mom had no daughters, and she really wanted a daughter. He thought he was in love. We got married. By 17, I was married and graduating high school. Oh, but one day I looked around and it wasn't real. It wasn't real because I can say now what I couldn't say then. I didn't love him. I married him to get out of the street. I married him to be able to try to be a normal teenager again so I can just go to school and not have to worry about where a meal was going to come from. And I can go shop with his mom because that's what teenage girls do. And it was all the wrong reasons. It was selfish, it was ugly. But when they say hurt people really do hurt people because I took full advantage of a situation, and at the time it seemed so right, but it was so wrong. So we're young, we're married, definitely probably not get married that young because you still want to do stuff. But the bigger picture was we weren't mentally compatible because I've been grown since I was a kid and he's been a kid, not yet grown. So my mind is on we got to save money. We got to get do this. We got to do it. His mind is on we got to party. Got to go to the club. We got to go to the car show. The incompatibilities were there, and I was tired. People people think that people try to kill themselves because of whatever. But I'll be honest and tell you, I walked in one day and I just felt like I did not want to get back up. I wanted to just go to sleep and stay asleep. I wasn't really angry. I didn't want anybody to save me. I was just tired because here I am, 17, and I've lived the full life of an adult already. I've seen people overdose. I've been molested. I've been raped. I've sold drugs. I've been in fights. I've watched things go on with my mother. I've watched my father die. He got out of prison and a year later was dead. I've watched perpetually all these things happen and I'm just tired. So I try to kill myself. Doesn't work clearly since I'm still here. I then I'm mad because now who tries to kill themselves? Now you have this thought process, maybe it's something wrong with me. And at that time, in the environment that I was brought up in the culture, culturally, you don't go to therapy. You don't go for help. And as I began to get on the path of going through therapy, now I'm mad I have to go through therapy. I'm mad that these people want to talk to me about stuff that I don't want to talk about. And they're revealing to me that because I was premature, stayed in an incubator, and nobody cuddled me, and my mother wasn't there, and all of this and that, that I have reactive attachment disorder. So they're pretty much telling me that I don't attach to people anyway. So it's perfectly normal that I didn't love this man that I married to have as a husband that I was supposed to love but couldn't, but didn't. And I'm like, hold on. I understand what you're saying from a mental perspective, but that's not right. That can't be right. But I'm still young. So, of course, at that point, I don't fix it. I run from it. So I stay married because I think I'm supposed to for 3 years. I'm in college. We're both in college. We're married. We have a son. One day I just wake up and I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. And I pack up my son and I leave. No real reason other than tired of living a lie, tired of not keeping it real, as they say. Just tired. So I go through not wanting to date because clearly men don't understand anything. But that's all I know because I've been being touched and gone through all these things for so long. Now my body is addicted to, if nothing else, at least the touch. So I may not want to hear anything he has to say, and I may cook him dinner and clean the house because this is what we're taught that women do. I'm mentally disconnected. So I go through this. I get husband two. With husband number two, I have 5 more kids. So now I'm up to 7 kids. Uh, I'm back in the lifestyle with the up and down. Am I going to work? Am I going to sell drugs? Am I going to work? Am I going to sell drugs? What am I going to do? I'm going to do both. I'm going to start a business because I shouldn't sell drugs because I have kids. I'm going to do both. And perpetually the whole while I'm spiraling out of control. Spiraling out of control. But there was one thing that was always consistent, and that was prayer. Because my grandmother taught me as a little girl that somewhere out there in the big, beautiful sky with the stars and everything, someone would hear me. And if I would just be patient and consistent, it would get better. And so I always knew to pray. That was the one thing that I always did. Now, I will say I went through different phases in praying, and I went through different phases spiritually. Because as I would go to different denominations of churches, I would be faced with things that would make me have questions. Okay. And so to not sound offensive, I'll just leave it just questions. And so we all go through stumbling stages where it's like, maybe this isn't right. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But how could we serve a creator of love and hate someone? This couldn't be right. Well, why would we do this? And so each time I continuously kept kind of moving, kind of like a vagabond, kind of just like a hobo with my little sack of my little Bible and my little notebook. And I'm just going from place to place while still living this crazy lifestyle, but believing that if I can just tap in, that eventually everything would change. So we got raided. The police kicked in the door, looking for drugs. There were no drugs in the house. But the whole situation is an eye opener because you think you have all the control in the world when you have money, you have no control. When they kicked in the door and pulled the guns and laid us on the floor, there was no control. When they threatened to take my children from me, that was my breaking point because they were the first things I actually really had a genuine, heartfelt feeling for. It was different. I had been with men, I had my, but nothing had touched my heart like these kids. These kids were what worked at my heart to change me. And I said I would never, ever do anything else, ever, that could separate me from my children. I prayed and asked that if he got me out of that situation, that I would never jeopardize them again. And that was a huge turnaround. The tornado kind of stopped twisting. It's still in formation, just not twisting, because after that, I began to learn from my mother's addiction and her using drugs the whole while she was pregnant that I had a chemical disorder. My chemicals were unbalanced. So I was highly intelligent, off the charts, intelligent, but my social skills lacked a whole lot. So I can like you, but kind of not talk to you ever. Hello, when we see each other, and have no animosity, nothing. Would give you the shirt off my back, but I just wouldn't talk. I'm kind of like a turtle, is how I'll describe the personality. I poke out, peek around, go back in. The only time you would really catch me all the way out of the shell is if involving the kids. So now it's hard to heal more because I won't come out so that people can help me see the beauty in me. I'm in the shell. All I know is this shell. So I try to kill myself again, a second time. But this time, it's not emotional at all. This time, they've put me on a birth control method that has thrown my hormones off. And I believe that if I don't kill myself, I'm going to hurt somebody. So I try to kill myself again. We go through counseling. They take me off the birth control. They realize it's the birth control that's thrown me off. They take me off the birth control. We begin to go through counseling. And they're like, yeah, your hormones were thrown off, but what makes you think you have the capability of hurting people? I tell them I just really don't care. And I begin to explain to them why I think I don't care. Because of course we all think we know. When really the reasons that I were giving sounded right. Well, I don't care because I've been raped. Well, I didn't care before I got raped. Well, I don't care because my mom didn't care. Well, I can remember now being a child and kind of being like, I'm good. I don't really care. Take my toys. I don't care. Take it. Type thing. So I realize, though the people are talking to me and I'm being counseled, that I'm still not really catching this. I really kind of don't care what they're saying either. And I dig deeper into scripture. So I always read the Bible. But now I've began to open up my mind and begin to read other things. So with my King James Bible, now I'm also reading the Quran. And I'm also reading the Sefer. And I've opened up and just began kind of reading different literature on Buddhism and different things because I feel like I'm getting an answer, but not a whole answer. And for me to find peace, I have to figure out where this peace really comes from because I don't have this down pat. And so I began just studying. And the more I would study, the more I would realize that we're taught hate. We're taught judgment. We're taught to feel uncomfortable and unsafe around people that would probably never harm us. And that causes us to let down a guard and let the people that will harm us in. We're so busy protecting ourselves from the people we think are going to harm us. The ones we choose to trust are the ones that end up harming us. So as I go through that process and I begin to spend more time in prayer, I begin to realize prayer isn't a 5-minute thing. It's not like breakfast, wolf down a banana, throw back some coffee, head for the hills. I realized I had to really sit down. And it wasn't always about asking for something. Sometimes I had to listen. And when I began to learn to shut out the noise of the world, shut out the noise of my head, the thoughts, the different things, and just quietly listen, I realized I could hear
Mm.
things that other people didn't think were there. Not like a person who has schizophrenia or something hearing voices, not like that. Like a very spiritual, very peaceful, very soft, still voice explaining that no matter what you've been through, it's purpose behind it. The pain had purpose. And I didn't leave you and I didn't let it take you. But but everybody is going to get a little rain, a little sunshine, a little rain, a little sunshine. And so as I began to understand and pay attention to even the wind blowing through the trees, when I began to pay attention to the little things, not the money, not the cell phones, not the social media, when I began to sit on the porch and watch the leaves dance in the trees and realize that all of that is calculated and that that tree, it's been through some things too. It's been rained on, it's been snowed on, birds have used it as a urinal, but it's still green and beautiful. And I had to look at that tree, and that tree had to be me. And I had to then figure out my purpose. What is the purpose of a damaged little girl? What could I be good for? Yeah, I'm good on my jobs, I excel, but I'm smart. But it's more to me than being smart. So you gave me all this intelligence, and then you let me go through all this stuff. What is my purpose? What do I do? And when it came upon me to write my story, I didn't want to write. I said, for all I've accomplished outside of all of this, nobody knows this. See, I live in Florida now. I don't live where I was born and raised. Nobody knows my mother was a heroin addict. Nobody knows that I was raped at 15. Nobody knows what I've been through. All they see is me, a businesswoman, and this, and a mother, and a football mom. And will they like me if I tell my story? Will people judge me if I tell my story? And so now I don't want to tell my story because my story is ugly. You know what I mean? Who who wants to tell this? And I had to get to a place to realize my story wasn't mine to keep.
Mm.
My story could be any little girl's story, but they don't know they can overcome it if no one ever tells that they went through the story. Like, you don't know you can live through a hurricane until you've talked to the survivor that just came through the hurricane. Oh, I say I had some water, I had a generator. Then they tell you what they did, and then it makes it easier. And so my hurricane was something I had to tell that I survived so somebody else could survive it. And it was really hard. It took me forever to release the first book, because as you write, you think, as you think, you hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But a very, very special thing happened. The more I thought, the more it came up, the more I faced it and wrote it, I released myself from it. It still hurt, and it will probably always have a pinch, but the pressure and the bondage of it was free. I had put it all in the book, and that portion was gone. And I still was leery. But when I got the first response, when I had the first person text me and say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know you went through that. But here's what I'm going through." And reading it helped me overcome this, because they may not go through all of it. Very few people really go through all of it. But each little part that they did helped them to realize, for one, when you're, I hate to say victim, but when you're kind of the victim, you feel like you're the only one who goes through this.
Yeah.
Who else in the world would go through this but me? Okay. But you're not, because nothing is new under the sun. So someone has gone through it. The other thing I learned is that if we pay attention and read scripture, sermons aren't bad. I truly don't think sermons are bad, but we get caught up in listening to other people tell us what the scripture says versus us reading, analyzing, comparing. It's okay to have a dictionary and a thesaurus when you're reading so you understand. I even went as far as to read historical data on the places that the stories were taking place. So I could understand, what was this like then? Was it a desert area? Was it a foresty area? Was it a mountainous area? How does this relate to me? How can I see myself, my story in this? And then you realize that there was a young woman raped in scripture. You realize that young women were ostracized in scripture. You also realize there were women that overcame and that took charge and that made differences, even if it was from the background.
Yeah.
You realize that their voice, that our Creator gave our voice power. You realize that while the men were gone to war, we were called to pray to save the people from the famine and the death. And then you realize, okay, all this time, I thought it was about me, but it was never about me. It was about me finding the strength to walk into my purpose for the community, for the children, for strangers I may never meet.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the journey.
Wow. I remember you saying once, the joy is in the journey. Finding the joy in the journey. Is that
Yeah,
what
I was just, we just did a book collab, me and 90 other women, finding joy in the journey. And
finding
each
joy?
of us told our story to help people overcome grief. And very, very touching book,
Yeah.
because everybody deals with death different. Some embrace it and they're waiting for it and they celebrate it. Some mourn it and are depressed for years. But each of us told how we dealt with it. And so far, the readership on it, the reviews on it is very well. Lots of people are finding healing and inspiration.
That's the thing, right? That's like you said, when we go through what we go through, it's it's something that's hard. It's something that we go through that we have to really, at the time, feels like it's going to, it's the end of everything, but actually it's the beginning of a journey. And we get to turn it into this, what you're doing now. So tell us a little about your work now and what your message is for everyone watching that's on this journey now to find their freedom from the things that happened or are still happening perhaps for them.
Right now, I work a whole lot with victims of domestic violence.
Yes.
And it's a real hot point for me because in the older portion of my life with husband number 1 and 2, I went through domestic violence. um, I even, in the relationship as a 14, 15-year-old with that boyfriend, is when domestic violence started. So I try to get, my goal is for women and men, because men are abused too, to understand you're worth more. A lot of people end up in relationships where they accept abuse because they don't feel they have anybody else, or that no one else will want them, or that no one else will help them. They are not educated to the fact that abuse is not just hitting. You can have verbal abuse and financial abuse. A lot of times, financial abuse is more experienced by women because you get into a relationship, you have no job, He moves you away from your family. You're in a strange place. You don't know anything. And now he has the power because he has the money.
Yeah.
And so I work very hard. I do a lot of speaking, one-on-one and in group settings, to young women, to explain to them, you're more than what you've been through. You're still here for a reason. Come out of your shell and find you. Find you. Everybody's not meant to be a business owner. It's okay to have a job. Everybody's not meant to be what society considers rich, because does it really make a difference anyway? You know, I do a lot of exercises with them, like showing the life cycle of a plant. The life cycle of a plant is kind of like our life cycle. We just don't die and regenerate in that fashion. So you have the plant grows, it's beautiful, the seeds fall off of it, the plant dies, the seed grows. This plant has died, so this new plant could grow for the most part. We have to let our old self die for our new self to grow,
Yeah.
because we can't continuously keep the cycle of pain and hurting people going. We do a lot of clothes giveaways, food giveaway, um, even furniture giveaways. I give away a lot of books, because even though I get fussed at and they tell me you write books for a business, I really don't write books for a business. I write books for my ministry. That's my way of giving the message to people, because I take my story of what I've been through and I line it up with scripture
Mm.
and the solution, and I line it up with scripture so people can see our creator hasn't left us. We go through some things. We go through trials, we go through tests, we go through tunnels. But as long as you can still see light, you're still here. Some people don't make it through. And I work a lot with, and I used to didn't, I was a little standoffish, but now I work a lot with people 55 and older. And it's very eye-opening for me, because in my mind I pictured at 55, you got it all together. You're retiring, you're moving to the 55 plus community, you are living life and playing golf. But it is so sad to find that that's not true.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few domestic violence victims come out of that 55 and older situation. A lot of people that um, thought they had it all together, and then the economy changed and they lost it all. People who are still trying to find that special mate,
Mm.
or that are still insecure with who they are and where they came from. Some still holding on to the damaged little boy and girl inside of them. And so in dealing with them, it's a little different, because my personality, I'm just transparent. At this point, after all I've been through, what's left to hide? I'm just out there. Here I am. But with people that are a little older, they're not really as transparent or as open. And so you have to kind of approach them just a little differently, with a little more care. You got to have your kid gloves on. And so you meet some that still only wear dresses because women don't wear pants. And you're like, no, it's okay to put on a pair of pants. It's 2020. No, women don't wear pants. And you go through these different things, and I just work to get them to know that through it all, you're not forgotten. You're still loved, and you can still make it. And you'd be surprised how many of them just need to hear that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
That's some powerful work, profound work that you're doing, to help these women and men that are going through some really hard situations.
yeah,
So I want to thank you for sharing so openly and vulnerably your entire journey, which was, you know, just like I said at the beginning, riddled with hardship and trauma, and like you said, layer after layer, just packed on and on and on, and having to do the work to unpack that and peel those layers back, and finally be in service. That's something that I think that the audience would agree that's watching this that it takes courage and it takes an inner knowing of that you were meant to go through this, even though as bad as it was, for this purpose, that you can now be here having this conversation and we can be of service. So I really appreciate that. I know you've written so many books, but I know that as a gift you were offering to our audience one of your books. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yes. I would like to give as a gift, however many people ask for it, I will send it, a copy of A Victim No More. And A Victim No More is the story of my life during the phase of domestic violence. It's very transparent, though, very graphic. I tell the stories as they actually happened because it's kind of a twist in it. A lot of people think that because they fight, they're not a victim.
Hmm.
So you have people that are fully aware they're a victim because they don't fight, they just get hit, and they know they're a victim, so they know to call and get help. But you have people who were raised kind of like me that has had to fight to survive our whole life. We just look at it as another fight. So if you hit me and I hit you back, I feel like I had a fight. I don't feel like you were abusing me. And I had to come to grips with the fact that no one should hit. So even though you don't want to be a victim, you are a victim and you have to get out of the situation. You can't, it's not normal to just fight all the time. And so I talk about that very openly. But in the book is also resources for every state, for all 50 states. I have in the resources on where they can get help, where they can get counseling, shelter, food, because a lot of people don't know that they can get away.
Yeah.
And so I offer the book at no charge. They can reach out to you or they can reach out to me directly. I will send books, whichever you feel most comfortable with. But I feel that the book will help those who need it because
Yes.
people try to leave without a plan. If I don't say anything else that's a message in here, let me say, if you're in a domestic violence situation, physical, mental, emotional, financial, yes, get out of it, but don't leave without a plan. Because if you leave without a plan and end up having to go back, the abuse will be worse. If you leave without a plan and you can't get to a safety zone, as we'll call it, and he finds where you are or she finds where you are, you could end up a statistic. Make a plan, a very viable plan, and don't be silent. Find someone that doesn't know both parties and find an ally that even if they just put money to the side for you, even if they just put clothes to the side for you, so when you make that bolt, you're not bolting with nothing. It's okay to get help. It's okay to leave, but have a plan. Always have a plan.
That's very sound advice. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for that message. And to everybody that's watching, if this speaks to you and you would like a copy of Precious's book, Victim No More, I think that's a very generous offer for you to send a copy to as many people as would like this copy of your book. Thank you for that. And
Oh, you're
please
very
avail of that book if it's something that you would like. Just drop a comment, leave a note, leave a message here on this page for Precious and tell her what you thought about this interview and what are your takeaways. What are you thinking about after listening to this interview? We would love to hear from you, and I'm sure Precious would love to hear your thoughts on this interview as well. So thank you so much for watching, and Precious, thank you for being on this show and sharing
for
with us
inviting me.
so openly your journey and your victories and your triumph over trauma, and making that something that was precious for all of us to have in our life. Thank you for your guidance today and for being here with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Um, I wouldn't have the ability to tell the story if it wasn't for people like you. So thank you so very, very much for allowing me to be open. Because some people would have been like, "Oh no, don't say that on my show. That's dirty. That's bad." But so thank you very, very much.
by doing what you did, you open it up, just like you said, for everyone to know that it's okay. It's okay that I had what I had. You know, if we can all be open and vulnerable together, we can all heal. So thank you for joining me in this movement to help people find freedom from trauma.
You're very welcome. Anything you ever need from me, don't hesitate to call.
Oh, I'll be calling you for sure, for sure. Thank you so much, Precious.
You're welcome. You are so welcome.